Hello, DP music teachers. My name is Matt. Thank you for being with me here today virtually, wherever you are. I hope that you and your families and your communities are safe and happy and healthy. And I'm here to talk to you today about ensemble repertoire in the context of IBDP music, course of First Assessments 2022. So when we're talking today, we'll be talking about kind of an overview of the class. We'll be talking about how to think through selecting repertoire, how we then take that and assess and instruct in the context of a musical ensemble, how we might think about framing the year or 2 years of the course in our ensemble through assessments, and then some general suggestions from me. So it's important as we start to know that this course, the Diploma Music course, First Assessments in 2022, is a framework that has set outcomes. So if you are an MYP teacher, you're used to dealing with a curricular framework where the assessment objectives are set by IB. In this particular course, we have assessment objectives set by IB as well as the actual tasks that students will be completing. So it's important when we think about this class to remember that it's practical. This class is about doing. And this class is about students' musical identities. So their musical self and their interests need to come out through this class, really through 3 roles: through researching, through creating, and through performing. So when we think about IB's definition of musicianship, we have the course really wanting students to explore diverse musical material, to really think about music through processes where they're exploring, they're experimenting, they're presenting, and then lastly, really thinking through those 3 roles: researcher, creator, and performer. And it's important to remember that this is about application of research through creating and performing. So we need to, in our ensembles, we need to think about how can we get students researching in my ensemble, get students researching, and to take that research and apply it to performing and creating. The course has contexts, 3 of them, that ask students to think through different lenses. And this is designed to kind of push their thinking about their musical identities. And the first, as you can see there, is personal, right? So music that the student knows and they're familiar with. The second is local, right? Thinking about the lived community of the student, but also the student's community of the family, or a community of their home country if they are currently in your school and they didn't grow up in the country where your school is located. And then lastly, global. And I want to be very clear here in that global is, in this course, is synonymous with unfamiliar, right? And also variety. So we want students exposed to unfamiliar variety. But this level of unfamiliarity might not necessarily be something in or out of the Western art music context. It's just unfamiliar. So if a student has never heard Palestrina before, that is unfamiliar. And you can expose them to Palestrina through the repertoire you select for your ensemble. It is also important to note that all of these contexts are generalizable and are unique to the student, because what is personal for me might not be personal for you, and so forth. The course is also organized through areas of inquiry. And I won't read these to you, but it's important that we are thinking through these 4 in terms of how we are programming for our ensembles. The definitions to all of these areas of inquiry are found in the Diploma Music Guide on page 22. So then what do? So we need to, as I mentioned previously, and this is critical, right? We need to have students researching independently, right? Now we can structure this research. We can say, okay, students, go research this. But the work ultimately that students need to submit to IB needs to be independent. And students need to take that independent research and apply it through performing and creating. So for example, because I learned this, I then made this performance. Because I heard this music I had never heard from before, I thought about music I like, combine those 2, and then produce this creation. So we need to make sure that we are giving the students time to be exposed to diverse musical material, thinking through those areas of inquiry framed by the context. So let's go back to what I just said. So we want students to independently research. We want them to be able to explain that research through the area or areas of inquiry, and then know that they are pulling music from a personal, local, and or global context. So as conductors, right, we need to make sure that we're thinking about those context, the areas of inquiry, and the assessment tasks for the course in terms of how we select repertoire. What repertoire will lead my students to unpack those 4 areas of inquiry and prepare them for the 4 assessment tasks for high level or 3 assessment tasks for standard level that are compulsory in the course. And then how, again, I want to make sure this point is clear, how am I inviting them to independently research and then apply that research to their own creations and their own performances. Now, easier said than done, right? But we start introducing this vocabulary because if you're currently teaching the course, or you're maybe going to teach the course next year, as you engage with the trainings from IB and the resources that are available through the Program Resource Center, the teacher support material, you will have found out like, these areas of inquiry, they can really work for a lot of different types of music. And the answer is exactly. So as you think about repertoire, you want to make sure that you are incorporating as much discussion about areas of inquiry in your daily instruction and performances. So thinking about how do I present areas of inquiry to a concert audience? How can I have my students reflecting through the areas of inquiry? Making sure that you are giving students some voice in the process, either your whole ensemble, your diploma music students, or any combination of the two. Meaning, could you have your students vote for the piece? Okay, so this starts to get them in the doorway in. Can you have them start thinking about the criteria of selection for the piece? Okay, so I'm just thinking we could frame a concert through area of inquiry 2 and area of inquiry 3. Okay, students, we need to have a balanced repertoire selection of 2 and 3. Go ahead and listen to this website, JW Pepper, find songs that interest you and align them to area of inquiry 2 and 3 and email them to me as a song suggestion, or use a Google form, or use some kind of online aggregator, right? So student voice. Making sure that when you plan your concert and then plan your year, you're thinking through the syllabus components and those 3 or 4 tasks. Making sure that you are designing your lessons. Again, remember, I know we are conducting, right? So in my performing ensemble, that we are designing experiences to our students independently apply their research, they're performing, they're creating, and then that they have time to kind of synthesize that all together. So in terms of the decision regarding the delivery, we need to make sure that we're thinking through how we are assigning students membership to the course. So when you're thinking about the diploma music experience in your ensemble, do we want some students to have this experience? Do we want all students to have this experience? Are all diploma music students in one ensemble, or are they spread across multiple ensembles? How much grading time do you have as the teacher? How much flexibility do you have in terms of the how you kind of frame and run your rehearsals? Are your rehearsals mostly full ensemble all the time? Are you using sectional time, etc.? Because the next question is then, okay, so if some students are participating in the diploma music experience in my ensemble, but not all, do I then give those students time to work in class on diploma music? So they're going to sit out of the ensemble rehearsal process for 20, 30 minutes, as an example. Do I kind of design my rehearsal time around inviting students to do some of the diploma music work? So maybe I know on Tuesday I'm going to have a sectional time, and I know that in some of those sectional time, certain students will be sitting, and so then those students who are sitting can complete their diploma music work, as I just said there. right? So there's a lot of considerations you need to think about when you're implementing this course in an ensemble. The suggestions I will have for you moving forward will be if everyone in the ensemble is participating in diploma music to some level. Now, don't panic, we will get there. So the first thing we need to consider about if all students are going to participate is really the frequency of the assessments. Right now, we have, again, those three roles and those three things student needs to do, right? Apply independent research to performing and creating. And so as you see here in front of you, you might, I'm suggesting that you follow some kind of rhythm with how you're assessing students. So you would have some kind of research assignment happening 2 times a week for your diploma kiddos versus 2 times a month for everyone else in the ensemble. But everyone's kind of working on the same thing. So you are not having to stop your ensemble to do diploma music, right? You are kind of integrating this together. The same thing you can see there with level of creations and level of performing. Now, this is an approach that you could do based on my suggestion, my humble suggestion to you all, right? None of this is compulsory. This is just Matt's thinking about how you could organize this course to an ensemble. The same thing with kind of the role of the student in the ensemble. So for example, if I am a year 2 diploma music student, my job might be to take the research that has happened over the 6 weeks that we're working towards a performance, and then I'm going to kind of consolidate that research, and I'm going to then format that into program notes for the concert program. As a year 1 diploma music student, I might be contributing to those program notes, but maybe if I'm not a diploma music student, but I'm still in the ensemble, I might be, creating like a listening log or a kind of a list of songs that align to the performance repertoire, that also align to the areas of inquiry, that also align to the context. So the same thing with the creating row here in this chart. Students could kind of curate and assemble all of the little compositional ideas that they've been doing along the way. And then when you have a concert program for parents, now again, I'm thinking pre-COVID, right? We can all gather, or in countries where it's safe to gather and have a performance in real time, where families could have community members who come to the concert could have the program in their hand, as well as a link to a virtual program where they can explore more about the areas of inquiry, where they can read about all the research that had happened through this particular unit, and then they can hear particular compositions, creations that were generated by the members of the ensemble. So if we're thinking about a syllabus component, we can think about exploring music. And we can think, we know per IB that this is a 2,400 word document that should look at 2 different areas of inquiry. And that is the research part of it. And then students need to explain in that 2,400 words how they take their research and apply it to a creating exercise, find a stimulus for performance based on their research, and then create, based on that performance stimulus, a performed adaptation where they're going to explain that through the second area of inquiry that they've selected for this particular task. So now in terms of framing this for your class, depending on the needs of your students, you might, as the conductor and the teacher, not have the kids really worry about 2,400 words, because that's the final part of the task, right? But you could have everyone in your ensemble make a creating exercise, and you could dictate as the teacher that, okay, kiddos, you're going to use technology for this first creating exercise. You could also then dictate that the performed adaptation is either acoustic or technological, depending on the needs of your students, right? So you're taking that kind of larger task and you're really honing it in to meet the needs of your ensemble. Again, students can be working on this independently, right? They could do the creating exercise for homework, or you could give them in rehearsal time to kind of work on this particular component. The same thing is true with the adaptation, right? Could students individually go into a practice room during your live rehearsal and work on this performed adaptation? Could they do research and performing at home? Really, it's up to you. And then throughout the course of the unit, knowing that this is your first concert, right? The goal of this first unit is getting every student in the ensemble ready for a miniature exploring music task. So for my year 2 diploma music students, I might have to generate 600 words of research. And I'm going to have to use some of the music we're studying we're studying and rehearsing for the performance that's coming up. So that is the 50% of the teacher selected content, meaning the teacher would say like, okay, so you need to study from concert repertoire 1, 2, and 3 as the basis for your miniature exploring music task. However, because you have to get ready for independent musical thinking for the task we ultimately submit to IB, you need to then pick half of the content that you're going to study, half of the music yourself, and you need to relate it to the particular music that we are performing in our concert. And as you'll see in a couple of slides, one of the suggestions I have for the first concert is I Love My Love, an arrangement by Gustav Holst, right, of a folk song. So could we find other folk songs that might align to the particular area of inquiry where Holst would fit, right? And singularly put, the Holst fits in area of inquiry 2. So we would find other folk songs that fit into area of inquiry 2. Right, and there we have the half of the teacher selected content where students are having to study the music that I picked as the conductor, and then they are bringing to that their own musical interest through that same area of inquiry, through the kind of lane of folk song that I started with as the conductor, but then they find their own. And then they turn in that research, and then I assess it with criterion A for the exploring music component, strands 1 and 2. And you can see then it's just kind of desegregated a little bit more cleanly with fewer requirements for the year 1 students. And then if I am not a diploma student, but I'm in the ensemble, right, I have fewer words and I have more teacher selected content, ultimately moving to where the students will just do research on the music that we are doing for our concert. So in terms of what I would do next with that, so the students have done all this great research, right? And they did that maybe over the course of a week or 2, and then I'd say like, okay, I've given them feedback on the research, I've given them feedback through criterion A, strand 1 and 2, and then I would say, okay, so the next step, students in my ensemble, all students, is that I want you to make an exercise where you have to apply that research, and or then a performed adaptation where the research is applied. Again, flexible depending on the needs of your group and the needs of the moment. So the next syllabus component then is experimenting with music. So we were just talking about exploring, now we're going to change gears and think experimenting. So in this particular component, we have to write 1,500 words, and we need to use 2 areas of inquiry. And although it's not compulsory, IB strongly recommends that the 2 areas of inquiry you cover in the exploring music also are different, The 2 areas of inquiry for exploring music are different than the 2 you pick for experimenting with music. So across the 2 components, you've got 2 areas of inquiry and then the other 2 areas of inquiry. So they will hit all 4. You have to have 3 related excerpts in creating, about 5 minutes when it's recorded. That should be through the first area of inquiry, and then 3 related excerpts in performing, also 5 minutes through that second area of inquiry. Now, again, thinking through the needs of your students, you might decide that you want to have them not so much focus on the writing, but really focus on creating. And you're going to mandate that they create through technology. You might also then say, well, we are in a choir or a band, whatever your ensemble is, or an orchestra, or a jazz ensemble, right, or a guitar class, whatever it is, Caribbean drumming, doesn't matter. But because we are preparing for performances in this ensemble, that your performance excerpts for experimenting with music need to be acoustic. They need to be using the instrument or instruments that you play in this particular ensemble. And that is a-okay for you to dictate as the conductor for practice assessments. Because remember, the final assessment students submit to IB need to be their own independent work. So what might this look like? So now I'm thinking about that same first unit, but now through the lens of experimenting with music. So I might have my year 2 students in diploma music write 450 words that focuses on their creating. And they need to use a little bit of stimuli material from the music we're performing for the concert. And then they're going to take that music we're performing for the concert and then find music that interests them, that relates, but is mostly stuff that they find. Right, so they're going to have to reference the music I've picked as a conductor a little bit, and they're going to have to then use the music they find quite extensively in this practice task. If you notice DP music year 1, like it's more even, and then for year 2 and year 1 in the ensemble, the non-diploma music students, they have 100% stimuli selected by me, the teacher, right? So they are pulling specifically from the music that we talk about in class. And as you can see there, using criterion B to assess this particular task. So now here is some sample repertoire I can now use to bounce some more specific ideas off of you. So think SATB choir. So think maybe a more advanced group, about 60 students, right, to kind of frame this out. And you can have fun with these links there after the presentation's over, just to kind of get you thinking. The 3 pieces in the bottom are not necessarily things that would be performed per se, just examples for students. Because as someone who is primarily in a performance-based ensemble, I know as the conductor that I'm going to need to work in music technology. I'm going to need to work in Area of Inquiry 4 into my particular ensemble, because I know that that is something that my students might not get on a daily basis. So I'm going to need to be very intentional with incorporating that into my rehearsals and into my assignments that I ask students to do in this particular first unit. And they're pretty fun, those bottom 3, just FYI. So now taking a look on the left with these particular musics and then exploring music. So I might invite students, all students in my ensemble, to do this. And I might say, hey, students, okay, so we listen to this wide variety of music from all over the world. And I would like you to pick maybe one of these cultures, or a culture where the music is just unfamiliar to you. Again, thinking global context. And so that's what I want you to find, students. I want you to find music that's unfamiliar to you. For the students who are going to be 100% teacher selected, I'm going to say, pick one of the songs from our concert, the one that was least familiar to you. For diploma music students, year 1 and year 2, I'm going to give them a balance between, again, stuff I pick versus stuff they need to pick on their own. And then all students will, in some scale or shape or form, they will have to perform and create. But I'm going to tell them that when you pick your stimuli for your creating exercise or your performed adaptation, that you find something that isn't built for your instrument. Meaning, if I am a bass player, I might find stimulus from a drum song from an unfamiliar musical culture. And I would need to think about, how am I going to get this drum sound to come out through my voice if I'm doing an acoustic performance? Or how might I take this drum sound, this drum idea, and make that happen through music technology? Right, so this is an example of how I would use the music I've selected for my concert as a doorway into this assignment for my students. And then it goes from there. So now, again, with experimenting with music, and this again is the 3 examples of performing, creating over time. So I would use basically the same prompt, right? Because I want to keep pushing my students towards global, towards unfamiliar, and towards variety. So I would say, okay, so culture most unfamiliar, and also that is the most interesting, right? And then when we take that research and apply it to performing and creating, I want you to pick stimuli that could be for your instrument. That part is okay, right? But where it's maybe not typical, right? So if I have a piece of music that is for voice, where I have long, beautiful lines, my phrasing is very legato, and I don't have a lot of time to take breaths, I might see, what would happen if I did that pizzicato? or staccato, but really thinking pizzicato like the plucking of a string. How would that change the performance of this particular beautiful legato line, right, as an example? Or how would I take and perhaps in a creating way, how might I take the particular idea of a fugue, because we're doing this little bit of fugal motion in My Love, My Love, and how would I maybe make that happen through technology? So some examples there of experimenting with music. So on the teacher support material on my IB, on the Program Resource Center in my IB, and then on the music page, if you can find the DP Music 2022 teacher support material, well, you will find it. You will find an audit sheet. And so these prompts kind of come from that audit sheet. And as you're now thinking about, okay, so, hey, Matt, I just heard you talk about ideas for assessing using all my Ensemble is great, but what is going to happen, minute by minute, day to day when I'm actually conducting? Well, I think you need to always make sure that students are considering, why was this piece of music selected in the context of the course, as well as what are the kind of components of the work. So really analyzing it. How does this music flow through time? How does then this music fit into particular areas of inquiry, and what context is this music for me? Where is genre and background, where is this music coming from, right? And then taking all that and really distilling it down into the focus for research, right? So as the teacher, as the conductor, I'm presenting this information to my students partially, and I might be having my students research this on their own partially. I then also am talking specifically about like the features of this particular music, and then I'm talking to them about, okay, so how could we take what we're rehearsing and use it for practical work? So as a teacher, I'm always throwing out suggestions to them to further explore. Whether they take those suggestions or not is not at the point here, but the point is that you are giving them suggestions all the time. You're asking for them, or hey, student, first flute player, hey, alto singer, hey, string bass player in my jazz band, how could we take these two measures, this phrase from the music we're currently working on, and how could we use that to further explore? What would be interesting? Oh, what would happen if we take this retrograde? What would happen? Again, you don't have to do it, right? This is the point, but you have to kind of present it. And my suggestion is that you present it to your class as potentials, right? So you are priming the pump, but you are always speaking to your ensemble through this language. So you are focusing the conversations towards those syllabus components for diploma music. And in some, hey, this would be a great idea for exploring. Hey, this would be a great idea for experimenting. If I was going to write this experimentation report, I would focus on measures 8 through 12. I would focus on rehearsal B to C, right? And then give a reason. Now, if you want to, assign it, right? That's where this suggestion is going, is that you are speaking through the component tasks always and framing things in the areas of inquiries in the context as you rehearse. Sorry, one more thought there. Because it's not like, again, you're going to stop teaching, you're going to stop conducting your ensemble, you're going to stop teaching your literature, and then start talking about diploma music. This needs to be integrated. So you can take 15 seconds and give us a little hook. Like, hey, who has a suggestion for exploring from this? Hey, student, what's your favorite part of this song? Tell me why. Okay, so how could you use that for exploring? Hey, other student, what's your favorite part? How could you use that for experimenting? Give me an idea. Oh, that's a great idea. Let's write that down. Right. So those types of things. And then we're right back to the rehearsal, but we're always priming the pump for the syllabus component. Sorry about that. Okay, so some humble suggestions regarding assessment practices. Whenever you have students do work in your ensemble, I strongly suggest that you're using at least one assessment criteria for every assignment, whether that's a strand, right, a particular bullet in the criteria, or both strands. That every piece of work that the student does goes into their journal. Again, I'm thinking all students now in the class, and that the journal is electronic, and that you are able to get back to students feedback on their work as promptly as you can using the language of the rubric, but also that you're using, and that's for homework, right, things done outside of class, but that you're also using the language of the using the language of the rubric to give students feedback in class, right? The presenting music rubrics will work for performing, right? And we'll talk about this later. The language of the assessment criteria can be used generally for feedback on all sorts of musical work that goes on throughout your ensemble. And your use of language in this way will really help students understand the different achievement levels in the course, as well as where they're at right now. And that's what I just spoke to. So, humble suggestions. As I mentioned, humble suggestions in the journal, please write everything down in the journal, every little thing, and that you develop uniform codes for your students to use when they're entering things into their journal. Because as we think about this course over 2 years, students should have many possible ideas they can develop into larger work from things they've done in your class, but you want them to quickly know in a quick, Control F, Command F search in a Google Doc, which assignments relate to what areas of inquiry and what pieces of the syllabus. So for example, a suggested code is there, with EP being the exploration portfolio, area of inquiry, what context for this one global, and then TS, teacher selected, meaning the student, while they could reference this particular entry, could not use this entry for submission to IB because I picked the work as the teacher, right? The student might go back and think like, oh, here's a great jumping off point. Because of this teacher selected work, I'm going to go research this other piece of music independently, and then the independent work can be submitted to IB. So I just wanted to draw your attention to the music guide, pages 71 to 73, very much in the back of the document, but you have the 4 generic achievement levels and the descriptors listed out for you there. And I strongly suggest that you use as many of those words as possible and those ideas to invite students to think and reflect on their work, as well as giving students formative feedback in the moment, whether it's about tone or phrasing or balance or any number of things that we constantly give students feedback on in our performing ensembles. Using that language, again, will help them codify the quality of their work in the moment, and then will help them see, okay, so what do I need to do to reach these higher achievement levels? And you would then need to explain that. So, as you think about designing your course, as I was mentioning throughout this presentation, it's important that you consider the syllabus components when constructing your repertoire for the academic year. And you might think about, how am I going to get students ready in my ensemble for these assessment tests for IB? So the first year, like perhaps this year, maybe let's say you have 4 concerts a year, right? Depending on your hemispheres, I'm not going to necessarily name months because the concert timeline might be different, but an early, a mid, like an adjudicated, and then maybe like a pop concert might be your 4, right? So you might decide in the first year to take that first concert and focus on exploring music. So everyone in the ensemble would do something around exploring music, researching, performing, and creating. And then for concert 2, we'd move on to experimenting, and we would use the concert 2 material for stimuli. And then concert 3 is all about presenting. So students would start to assemble the creations that they've done over the first 2 concerts, and then start to think about, okay, if they were going to submit this work or they were going to make a portfolio of their work, what songs would they want to include from the first two concerts and the third concert? And then lastly, the concert 4 might be dedicated more to the contemporary music maker or that more independent musical project. So you might have students in this 4th concert presenting their research. You might have students in this 4th concert conducting the ensemble, or maybe for the contemporary music maker, you have a choir student partner with a visual arts student, and they make the choir student makes a composition, and the visual arts student makes some kind of visual representation, etc. Right, and then we get to year 2. Okay, we're going to start with experimenting with music, and the independent contemporary music maker for higher level students continues. Then we're going to move to exploring, and then we're going to move to presenting, and then in February, March of year 2, then we start having students kind of pull everything together so they can start assembling those final pieces of work that we would then ultimately submit to IB, because for Northern Hemisphere schools, everything needs to be in the mail in April, and for Southern Hemisphere schools, everything needs to be in the mail in October. And I'm revealing my age there when I said in the mail. Let me change that to uploaded. Everything needs to be uploaded by April for Northern Hemisphere schools, and then October for Southern Hemisphere schools. So again, more humble suggestions from Matt. So I strongly suggest that you're using the assessment criteria, at least one strand, one bullet every day for something. The more you can work this into your language of instruction and formative feedback, the more students will understand the goal. Students can also reflect through this strand in terms of their performance. That you work hard to incorporate area of inquiry 4, right, electronic music in the digital age, into your instruction. This could be as simple as having students make a backbeat to one of the songs. So take the host and make it like we're in we're able to dance to it, right? In terms of like the boom chick, boom chick, boom chick, or take the alto line from measures 4 to 8 and make it into a loop, right? But you, student, physically make the loop. That you're always talking about the repertoire through the lens of the AOI, and really getting students to think about, okay, so how is this song, this particular area of inquiry? That they're able to apply their research on a regular basis, whether that's asking students to quickly share in the moment. Hey, students, who's done research on this particular song, right? Or what research do you have to share, knowing that you have asked students to do research on this particular song, right? Quick idea, quick idea, quick idea. Huh, interesting research. Can anyone else think of a creation idea that could come from that, or a performance adaptation that could come from that, right? These quick little things. You don't have to have them do it in class per se, but again, we're priming the pump. Or you let them do it in class, you make it real quick. Hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to work with the flute section. I'm going to work with the sax section. I'm going to work with the second violins, or I'm going to work with the alto section. And then I'd like everyone else to just take a minute, open your journals, and write out an idea. And then making sure that you give students voice and that they're able to kind of take and curate this material for sharing with the wider community as you get closer to concerts. So that concludes my virtual presentation for you today. I thank you for your attention. Please note there's a question and answer session coming up on Saturday, 31 October at 1800 hours Singapore Standard Time. And I will be available to kind of talk through this and share any ideas that this presentation may have started in your brain, as well as like kind of bouncing things out. My email address is there, and I thank you for your time. Just so you can see it, please find all the links for the songs that I referenced earlier, as well as the information which came from the music guide. I hope that everyone stays healthy, that you are having an enjoyable time with this new curriculum, and that you have a great rest of your day. Take care.